let's move on to Madison Square Garden. And there's been quite a lot of discussion there about
the origin
MSG,
of Garbage Gate.
Garbage Gate, that's right. I like that. Puerto Rico Gate, you could also call Hinchcliffe Gate. You could take it back as far as you want. So we've got a couple of Republicans, actually, who came out to criticize. First was Nikki Haley, who took to Fox News to critique the Trump campaign. Let's take a listen.
They were right to denounce the comedian. They need to go and tell Puerto Ricans how much, they do value them. They need to tell Latinos that, but they also need to look at how they're talking about women. I mean, this bromance and this masculinity stuff, I mean, it borders on edgy to the point that it's going to make women uncomfortable. You've got affiliated PACs that are doing commercials about calling Kamala the C word, or you had speakers at Madison Square Gardens, referring to her and her pimps. That is not the way to win women. That is not the way to win people who are concerned about Trump style. This is a time to talk about the economy. This is the time to talk about immigration. This is the time to talk about national security. And this is the time to talk about Kamala Harris.
So you could see there. I mean, my take actually, Krystal, was I think she's betting on a Trump loss. That's my guess from this clip, because I actually spoke to some others. People who are concerned but who are your friend and they want to help you win, they call you behind the scenes, right? They don't want to give the other side ammunition.
Yeah.
But when you're betting on a loss, you take to the TV and you're like, well, they need to do a better job of reaching out to women and this and this. But of course, I still want him to win because I'm working on policy, trying to cover her bases. This seemed like a soft 2028 launch, just from what I could tell. She's not a commentator. She's a politician, right? Mm-hmm. She also she's been rejected by the Trump campaign effectively, will not campaign with him, it looks like, up until Election Day. They previously had thought that they might, but there's still quite a bit of bad blood between the two camps. So there's quite a bit of jockeying that's also happening in this clip.
Yeah, I think the comments are accurate, but they're also motivated because it's not just her positioning herself for what comes next, and she fancies herself potentially the next Republican contender. Which I think is a little delusional, but whatever. That's how she's thinking, and she also is bitter because, to your point about you call him behind the scenes, he's not picking up those calls.
Yeah, that's right.
She has made herself available to go campaign for him, and he's like, no. And in fact, when and I think this is foolish, by the way, on his part, because clearly the Kamala campaign thinks, whether they're right about this or not, there's a possibility that they're right about it, that there are some of those Nikki Haley primary voters who are potential persuadable targets for them. They have made a very concerted effort. That's like the bulk of their campaign, is a concerted effort to reach out to those voters. And recently when Trump was asked about Nikki Haley on, I don't know, Fox and Friends or something, rather than trying to appeal to them, he trashes Nikki Haley and brags about how much he beat her by, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, this is just Trump and the way he operates, and his ego always comes first, even when it's totally inadvisable from any sort of a rational campaign perspective. Like, what would it hurt you to have her come and be on the stage with you? She's willing to do it, et cetera. It's certainly not going to be a loss, and potentially it's a gain for you, but that's just not in him to do. So I think Nikki Haley is right fundamentally in her comments. We'll play the Megyn Kelly comments in a moment, which are very similar. She had a very similar take. You had Tommy Lahren earlier on critical of some of the lack of outreach to women. And, it really they have actually primarily turned it into a real battle of the sexes kind of a vibe. And we've done a lot of scrutiny. There's been a lot of conversation about Kamala Harris needing to do better with men. She had that hot mic moment with Gretchen Whitmer, et cetera, et cetera. And you see them trying to make some efforts. You see her going on with, Shannon Sharp on Club Shay Shay. You see her going on The Shade Room and some of these more male-dominated podcasts. You don't really see equivalent outreach from the Trump side. He didn't go on with Brene Brown or whoever and Kamala did, by the way, some more female-dominated spaces. Instead, they've just consistently leaned into the camp masculinity theme that you saw at the RNC and that you certainly saw at Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan, Dana White, that whole sense. And so you have a few women in the party at least saying, and now actually Cernovich and Charlie Kirk as well saying this might be a little bit of an issue.
They're talking about the vote, right?
Yeah, so that's downstream of the approach.
This is where I'm I don't think that she's necessarily right. In terms of, what did she say in terms of this is not the way to win women? I mean, that also presumes what is the correct way to quote unquote win women? That just seems like a very, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's a comment that is directed at any reality. If we look at quote unquote women voters, they're voting on the issue of abortion. You can't win on the issue of abortion. Your best case scenario is to win men, drive up the margin, and then just hope that married women come along, as they have in the past, I think in 2016 and in 2020, to make sure that you don't get drowned out. That's part of the reason that, I think, didn't you reference those ads where it's like, women, it's okay to lie to your husband or whatever, which, by the way, is psychotic and weird. If you're in a marriage where you have to lie to your husband or your wife
not a good
who you're
vibe
voting
for your marriage.
you got to get out, all right? Let me just tell you that right now.
I saw a tweet about this too,
yeah.
where a woman was saying, like, who knows if this is even accurate, but that like every 4 years it's held because her husband's a big Trump supporter and she's not. And he was like, so where are you going to move if Trump wins again? I'm like, what kind of a marriage is this? Jesus Christ.
To her, get out. To him, you're a loser.
Psycho. Total
you're a
psycho.
loser. And vice versa. If you're berating your husband or whatever, you're also a loser.
I just would say, and then we'll play the Megyn Kelly comments and get her take on this as well. Nikki Haley referenced the fact that, you know, you had multiple sort of like sexually lewd jokes made at Kamala Harris's expense. You had the other joke from Tony Hinchcliffe that we haven't even played is about like, you know, Latinos coming inside. And you have Elon Musk's super PAC literally running an ad insinuating Kamala Harris is the C word. So, you know, certainly there are some women that are just voting on abortion. That's it. They're not going to change their mind. It's done. It's over. There's nothing they can say about it. But there are also some normie, and I know some of these women, normie, like previously voted Republican women who the tone is and the crassness is a problem, where they're not particularly like ideologically or issue focused. And so when that's the entire vibe of the campaign, in the same way I think that Democrats at times with like all the talk about toxic masculinity, et cetera, have put out the vibe of like, this is just not really a place for you if you're, you know, a white dude bro. That's the vibe that women are getting from these events of like, this is just not really like, this is just not really a place for me. Like this is not, you're not putting out welcoming vibes. And I'm put off by, you know, the quote unquote locker room talk is really not for me. It's in a locker room with other men. That's the reason why it's quote unquote locker room talk.
But he did win white women in 2016, you know? That's why I always come back to it. He actually did win.
But that's one of the groups that's been edging away from him.
Sure.
And there's very real most of the polling suggests that Kamala Harris is in position to potentially win white women this time around. And certainly she's betting on suburban women, which would be, you know, the type of people that Nikki Haley is most in touch with and is thinking about with these comments. Just to show you, like, you know, also Megyn Kelly, who's also very strong Trump supporter, certainly this time around. She also had some similar concerns about the tone of the MSG rally. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Trump was not well served by those around him last night. It wasn't a Nazi rally. All that's nonsense. But I'm telling you, even for me, and I voted for Donald Trump last week, it was too brotastic. Okay? It was. You're trying to win an election in which you're hemorrhaging female voters. Maybe when you present in front of hundreds, thousands at least, at Madison Square Garden, you clean up the bro talk just a little so you don't alienate women in the middle of America who are already on the fence about Republicans. Do they have no women advising their campaign? Is there no actual woman sitting behind the scenes coming up with a guest lineup and saying, let's just have a word with the guys who are going to be speaking about this isn't the bar. This isn't their living room. This is a campaign. This is politics. We're trying to get him elected. We don't need to rally the base or guys anymore. And it's not helpful, even if we do want to rally the base or guys, to go full off-color insults to different racial groups and so on. I get it. Trust me, nothing that was said offended me. I'm almost unoffendable. But I understand how this plays, especially with women. And it was an effed up choice.
I do love how it's never Trump's fault. It's always he failed by he can never fail. He's failed by the people around him.
I'm not sure I agree with her. Honestly, I think the base strategy is the one that works. I mean, women are college-educated women, or the Kamala base. That's who they're going after. Liz Cheney, all that. Bros are basically the Republican base. Gen Z split amongst men. That's what you need. Now, look, Ryan's
all on the
tweet.
margins, though.
But Ryan's tweet that you
it's
read.
all around the margins.
Ryan's tweet that you read is accurate, and it is one where it could be scary, right?
Should I read it again since there was a run segment? Go ahead, keep talking. I'll pull it up.
I can find it. It's something about like dudes don't have the capacity.
The organizational capacity. He says, I love my dudes, but if there is a nationwide contest between men and women that goes to the group that manages to show up at the right place, fill out their forms on time, and do all those things, the men would need to start with an advantage of several million to be competitive. Okay. Don't come at me. Those are Ryan Grimm's words. You can take it up with him. I'm not being sexist against men.
That's fair. It's just one of those where I think that this is a base turnout election. I don't think that this is necessarily, like, look, you're right, everything with margins, et cetera. But if you run up your margin with men enough, then that actually is one. That goes to the Trump campaign strategy. They just think that they're literally not winnable. And I honestly think they're probably correct at this point. Like, we're so bifurcated in terms of also the issue set that we look at for men and women are completely at odds. Immigration and the economy way higher for men. And for women, abortion is just so sky high. Like, what can you possibly say as a Republican to win that type of voter over? I mean, tone is really not going to cover. Maybe I am totally wrong. Okay, I might be. That said, the data tells us that if you drive up the margin with men, you will still get a substantial portion of married conservative women to come with you. That's enough to win the election. You don't necessarily have to win. Like single ladies are voting for Trump at for Kamala at like a 40-something% margin. Mm-hmm. It's crazy if you look at it. I mean, by the way, anthropologically, none of this is good, but that's a separate story. Like, if you're purely trying to win, that's what I would do.
Massive divide between college-educated women and non-college-educated men.
Yes.
But, I mean, the numbers are what they are in terms of every election, women vote more than men.
That's
so
true.
If you're going to pick one side, but Ryan's comments, putting Ryan's comments aside, if you're going to pick one side of the battle of the sexes to be on, just based on the fact that women always vote at higher rates than men, you would want to be on the side of women. So listen, how much is it? I don't know. I mean, you're right. Like, the Trump space is so locked in, but we're talking about a game of inches. So if you have some people who are on the fence, reminding them of everything that comes with Trump, and there are a lot of like normie women out there, normie people in general, who are just like, this is just gross. I don't know. I do think her point, too, about he doesn't have any... Well, he does. Susie Wiles on the campaign,
yeah, she's literally the number 2 on the campaign.
So, I mean, there are women's voices that are in there, but clearly, whereas the Kamala team has really tried to minimize their losses with men and try to keep as many, especially black and brown men, in the tent as they possibly can. There has not been similar outreach from the Trump campaign. And you're right that it is consistent with 2 different strategies. The Kamala strategy, if you look at the ad campaign that's been run, if you look at the Liz Cheney outreach and all this stuff, it has really been an attempt at persuasion. And the Trump campaign has been very much an attempt at, let's get some of these infrequent voters out, let's drive up turnout in the base. And like I said, you see that in closing ads where the Trump campaign's going all in on these culture war issues. The Kamala campaign is featuring a lot of former Republicans who are voting for her, and they're doing more of a class war. He's a billionaire, he's not for you, et cetera, et cetera. So, I guess that's the bet that both campaigns are placing. We'll see. We're going to see soon how it works out.
Let's stick with the MSG theme. There was some more quote-unquote fallout. Here we have Nicky Jam. He's a reggaeton star. He's half Puerto Rican. He has now withdrawn his endorsement of Donald Trump. He said he thought Trump would be good for the economy, but he cannot look past the disrespect that has now been shown to Puerto Rico. So I don't know. I mean, everyone thinks that this stuff will be consequential. They're like, oh, Bad Bunny has endorsed Kamala. Again, I have no idea. I find it very difficult to believe that if you're a Puerto Rican who is going to vote for Trump, that because Tony Hinchcliffe at a Trump rally made a joke about Puerto Rico, that is enough for you to switch your vote. Maybe it's enough for Nicky Jam. It just seems a little weird to me, especially if you live in the continental U.S. You don't even live in Puerto Rico. What are you so upset about? So anyway, that's me.
I think the case for, which I don't know, but the case for it mattering is, number one, in Philly, the places in the actual city of Philadelphia that have moved the most to the right were also the most heavily Puerto Rican parts of the city. And there's something like 500,000 Puerto Ricans in the state of Pennsylvania. So obviously, that's an important constituency. And then the issue isn't just this comment. It reminds of the Trump Hurricane Maria response and sort of brings up those memories, et cetera. Because, I don't know. I like you, when I'm looking at this Nikki Jam thing, I'm like, really? You didn't already know who this guy was?
Really,
like,
Nikki?
where you been? Okay,
Yeah, I'm like to
fine.
be honest, Nikki, the joke's on you, bro. You look like an idiot. I'll say it. It's like, oh, I never thought this could ever happen.
You're like, who did you think this was?
What's happening here, bro?
But, so,
also, if it's better for the economy, why does it matter? Huh? So your feelings about Puerto Rico are more important than the economy? Then you're an idiot, okay? It must be nice to be a rich reggaeton star.
I feel like it's reasonable for people to feel like, oh, you just hate me and the place I'm from and whatever, disrespect it.
Tony Hinchcliffe thing. It's not even like Trump said it. Hurricane Maria is a way more legit reason, by the way, to be upset about it. But clearly, Nikki didn't think about that whenever he was up on the stage. So, okay, I'll just leave it at that.
So anyway, again, it's one of these micro stories that after Election Day, we may look back and be like, oh, this didn't matter at all. Or we may look back and be like, damn, Trump lost Pennsylvania by 5,000 votes. And maybe this was the difference maker right there, which would be really crazy, but you just never know how it's all going to
pray that doesn't happen, just so I don't have to be subjected to this discourse for another 3 years. Let's continue with Trump. He was asked about Tony Hinchcliffe in the garbage truck. Let's take a listen.
I don't know anything about the comedian. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. I heard he made a statement, but it was just a statement that he made. He's a comedian. What can I tell you? I know nothing about him. I don't know why he's there. You put comedians up, and I guess he went on earlier in the show. I don't know who he is.
One of the most classic Trumps of all time.
Oh, I don't even know who this
I don't even know who the guy is.
Well, really?
Never heard of him.
He was at your rally, and your team vetted his comments.
He also said that he continues to say that about Mark Robinson. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about.
Didn't he call him a modern day MLK Jr. or something like that previously?
He's like, who? You're telling me for the first time?
Yeah, it's obviously not particularly credible.
Right.
But it shows you that many people have also pointed out that if Trump had said the same thing, he would get away with it and everyone would double down on it and no one would criticize it. But only Trump can get away with those things.
That's
and so
correct.
even the campaign, obviously, in a similar way that Kamala's distancing herself from the Biden comments, they realize it's a problem. Republicans in Florida ran away from it immediately, and other Republicans across the country, and Trump himself is like, well, I don't even know who this guy is. They clearly recognize this is a bit of a problem for them. They did the Allentown rally, made sure to have lots of Puerto Ricans there to validate on stage, whatever. So they know it is a potential issue. Is it a reality electoral issue? We'll find out soon.
Bingo. All right, let's continue. Let's put this up on the screen. Just last thing on this. So in terms of these stunts, one of the reasons it's kind of interesting is Data for Progress asked about people who had seen the recent news about certain events in the campaign. Number one was actually Trump serving fries at McDonald's in terms of the memeability of that. You only had 17% of voters who said they had heard nothing at all about it. Harris calling Trump a fascist. You only had 21% who had heard nothing about it. But actually, Madison Square Garden was number 3. So I have, again, Americans, you fascinate me every day. What breaks through and what doesn't? Why that one?
That one really did break through.
Krystal, it broke through more than Enemy from Within. What?
Yeah.
It broke through more than Trump going on Joe Rogan, which you heard some 32% of people saying never heard about it. Harris campaigning with Liz Cheney. I mean, what? How people consume the news, what they choose to click on and send to their friends, I again will never understand, but that does show you that sometimes things just break through for reasons that are far beyond our control.
Some things just take off.
See, McDonald's I get, but
escape
fascist and MSG, what? That's the one where I don't understand it. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.